Earn this. Saving Private Ryan wasn't just another World War II movie. It was a cinematic assault, raw, brutal, and devastatingly real. Behind the camera, chaos erupted. Actors fainted from exhaustion, stuntmen faced near-death experiences, and the crew wrestled with a director determined to capture nothing less than war itself. What audiences didn't know is that this authenticity came at a steep price: physical, emotional, and artistic. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 20 mind-blowing things you never knew about Saving Private Ryan. And wait until you hear the bonus fact, a hidden detail Spielberg buried so deeply, most fans missed it completely. Stay tuned, because once you hear these revelations, you'll never see the film the same way again. Let's dive in. The opening battle nearly broke the cast. The Omaha Beach landing isn't just one of the greatest war sequences ever filmed, it's also one of the most grueling. Spielberg shot it over 25 days, using over 1,500 extras, many of them Irish Army reservists. Temperatures soared, waves crashed, and the beach turned into a relentless grind. Actors were forced to sprint through mud, explosions, and water cannons for hours, their bodies bruised and battered. Spielberg refused to soften the experience. He wanted his cast to feel a sliver of what real soldiers endured. Tom Hanks later admitted, "You couldn't act that exhaustion. You lived it." It wasn't just filmmaking, it was immersion into hell. Spielberg banned storyboards. Most directors rely on storyboards to map out action sequences, not Spielberg. For Saving Private Ryan, he ditched them entirely. Why? He wanted the camera to feel like a soldier stumbling through the chaos, never knowing what came next. Cinematographer Janusz Kaminski said they often improvised shots on the spot, letting explosions and actors' movements dictate where the camera roamed. This method gave the film its terrifying unpredictability, not polished, but raw, not choreographed, but lived. The result? A battlefield that felt disorienting and real, just as veterans remembered it. Spielberg wasn't after spectacle, he was after truth. Veterans walked out of screenings. When the film premiered, theaters saw something unusual. Veterans, tough men who had lived through Normandy, quietly stood up and walked out. Not because the film was bad, but because it was too real. Many couldn't handle reliving the trauma. The Department of Veterans Affairs even set up counseling hotlines, anticipating the flood of triggered memories. Spielberg later said that if the film felt too much, it meant they'd done their job. It wasn't entertainment, it was confrontation. And for many who'd carried their scars in silence, the movie tore open old wounds. Saving Private Ryan didn't just win Oscars, it reopened history. Tom Sizemore had to pass drug tests daily. Tom Sizemore, who played Sergeant Horvath, was battling addiction during filming. Spielberg gave him a brutal ultimatum. He could stay on the movie, but only if he passed a daily drug test. Every morning before stepping on set, Sizemore had to prove he was clean. Spielberg insisted he couldn't risk the integrity of the performance or the safety of the grueling set. Sizemore later admitted that the discipline of those tests may have saved his career, at least for a time. In war, soldiers rely on each other. Spielberg demanded the same from his actors. The cast endured real boot camp, except Matt Damon. Before filming, the cast was shipped off to a 10-day military boot camp run by Captain Dale Dye, a retired Marine who specialized in training actors for war films. They hiked in full gear, slept in the mud, and endured relentless drills. Tom Hanks, Edward Burns, and the others bonded through misery, just like real soldiers. But Spielberg made one sly exception. Matt Damon, who played Private Ryan, was excused. The director wanted the rest of the cast to resent him, to feel he hadn't earned their brotherhood. That tension bleeds into the movie. Not just acting, but reality manipulated for art. The camera was deliberately wounded. The shaky, gritty look of Saving Private Ryan wasn't an accident. It was engineered. Spielberg and cinematographer Janusz Kaminski stripped protective coatings off the lenses, making them more prone to light flares and imperfections. They also used handheld cameras in brutal conditions, letting mud, water, and smoke scar the image. Spielberg called it a documentary feel under fire. The rawness wasn't just visual style, it was philosophy. Audiences weren't meant to watch the war from a safe distance. They were meant to feel bullets whip past, explosions blind their vision, and mud smear their perspective. The camera didn't just record battle, it fought in it. Spielberg refused to use green screen. In an era where computer effects were rising, Spielberg went in the opposite direction. He banned green screens. Every explosion, every tracer fire, every collapsing body was practical. The crew fired paintball-like squibs filled with blood, detonated hidden charges under sand, and used water cannons to mimic bullets hitting the surf. Even the blood in the water during the Omaha sequence? Powdered dye dumped in by the bucket load. Spielberg believed digital effects would sanitize the brutality. He wanted dirt under the fingernails of his movie, not polished pixels, but jagged realism. That decision set a new benchmark for war films. Real amputees played the wounded. When bodies explode on Omaha Beach, some of those men were not actors wearing prosthetics. They were real amputees. Spielberg cast them to heighten authenticity, equipping them with blood rigs that simulated limbs being blown off. When the cameras rolled, the effect was horrifying. Extras recalled being shaken to their core, forgetting for a moment that it was only a movie. It wasn't just special effects. It was the visceral reality of bodies torn apart. Spielberg wanted audiences to feel the cost of war in every frame, and nothing sold it better than brutal honesty. The opening battle nearly got an R-rating ban. Saving Private Ryan's D-Day sequence was so violent that the MPAA briefly considered refusing it an R rating. Studio executives feared it might be branded NC-17, which would have crippled box office returns. Spielberg refused to cut a single frame. He argued that to sanitize Omaha Beach would betray the soldiers who fought there. Eventually, the board relented, granting the R but with hesitation. The violence wasn't gratuitous. It was historical. And by holding firm, Spielberg forced Hollywood to confront the brutality of war without its usual glossy filter. Audiences weren't just watching history, they were drowning in it. Tom Hanks improvised one of the film's most iconic lines. In one quiet moment amid the carnage, Captain Miller says, "I'm a school teacher." That line wasn't in the script. It was Tom Hanks' improvisation. Spielberg loved it so much he kept it. The moment transforms Miller from war hero to ordinary man, reminding viewers that these soldiers weren't born warriors. They were teachers, farmers, postmen, regular people thrust into hell. It's a fleeting line, but it carries devastating weight. And now, before we move on to fact number 11, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next set of facts uncovers even darker secrets Spielberg buried in the making of this masterpiece. Spielberg kept the cast in the dark. During filming, Spielberg often withheld crucial details from the actors. He wanted their confusion and fear to feel real. In the Omaha Beach sequence, explosions went off without warning. In quieter scenes, he fed different instructions to different actors, creating subtle tension. Tom Hanks later revealed that Spielberg never fully explained Captain Miller's backstory until midway through filming. That uncertainty wasn't sloppy. It was intentional. Soldiers rarely knew everything, so why should the actors? Not clarity, but disorientation. Not comfort, but pressure. The result was performances tinged with unease, perfectly mirroring the fog of war. The sound design was a battlefield. Audiences remember the muted ringing in Tom Hanks's ears during the landing, but what they didn't know is how revolutionary it was. Sound designer Gary Rydstrom created ear-perspective audio, layers of gunfire, explosions, and muffled silence that shifted with Miller's point of view. They even recorded real World War II weapons to capture authentic gunfire. Spielberg insisted on deafening volume in theaters, making audiences flinch with every shot. Some cinemas even installed warning signs, cautioning viewers about the sound intensity. It wasn't just noise, it was shock therapy. Sound became another weapon in Spielberg's arsenal. Spielberg filmed in Ireland, not France Omaha. Beach wasn't filmed in Normandy at all. Spielberg chose Ballinesker Beach in Wexford, Ireland, for its similar geography and its ability to accommodate massive production. Irish Army reservists filled in as soldiers, and the crew transformed the beach into a nightmare of barbed wire, sand obstacles, and blood-dyed surf. Locals recalled hearing explosions shake the coastline daily. The irony? Tourists sunbathed nearby, just beyond the set. The clash of idyllic scenery and cinematic carnage mirrored the film's theme, beauty colliding with horror. Normandy couldn't be replicated perfectly, but Spielberg's Ireland became its haunting double. Spielberg didn't want a movie star ending. Originally, Paramount pushed for a more Hollywood-style ending, with Captain Miller delivering a grand, heroic speech before dying. Spielberg refused. He insisted that Miller's last words, "Earn this," be quiet, intimate, almost whispered. The studio feared audiences wouldn't accept such restraint, but Spielberg stood his ground. The quiet ending contrasted with the thunder of war, leaving viewers unsettled instead of comforted. It wasn't closure, it was responsibility. Miller's whisper became one of the most quoted lines in war cinema, proving restraint can hit harder than spectacle. Real World War II vets became consultants. To ensure authenticity, Spielberg consulted veterans who fought at Normandy. Men who had stormed the beaches walked the set, advising on tactics, weapons, and emotions. Many broke down in tears watching scenes unfold, saying it was the closest they'd come to reliving the invasion. One veteran told Spielberg, "That's exactly how it was." Their approval wasn't just technical validation, it was moral weight. Saving Private Ryan didn't just honor history, it bore witness to it. The consultants gave it a seal of authenticity that no Hollywood polish could fake. The cast had to carry real weapons. The rifles, pistols, and machine guns weren't just props. They were real decommissioned World War II weapons, each weighing exactly what soldiers carried in 1944. Spielberg insisted on authenticity, even though it exhausted the cast. Edward Burns recalled his arms aching after days of holding a heavy M1 Garand through endless takes. Matt Damon joked that he felt guilty because Private Ryan carried less gear than the rest. Not lightweight fakes, but the genuine burden of war. Spielberg wanted every movement, every stumble, every wince to be rooted in the physical toll of carrying history on their backs. Spielberg shot the film in chronological order. Most movies are shot out of sequence to save time and money. Spielberg ignored that logic. He filmed Saving Private Ryan in near chronological order, letting the actors bond, fatigue, and deteriorate alongside their characters. By the time they reached the climactic bridge battle, the cast was physically and emotionally drained, mirroring the desperation of their roles. Spielberg wanted that erosion of spirit to bleed onto the screen. Not manufactured weariness, but earned exhaustion. The gamble paid off. The gradual unraveling feels painfully real because it was lived day by day. A legendary actor turned down a role. Before Tom Hanks signed on, the role of Captain Miller was offered to Mel Gibson and Harrison Ford. Both passed. Spielberg eventually landed on Hanks, whose everyman presence fit perfectly. Hanks brought quiet authority, balancing soldierly grit with vulnerability. Imagine Gibson's intensity or Ford's rugged sarcasm. It would have been a completely different movie. Casting wasn't just about star power, it was about resonance. Spielberg knew Hanks could embody the ordinary man in extraordinary circumstances. In hindsight, it feels inevitable. But at the time, it was a gamble. The film boosted military recruitment. The Pentagon noticed something unexpected. After the release of Saving Private Ryan, U.S. Army recruitment numbers spiked. The film wasn't meant as propaganda. It was brutally honest about death and trauma. But its depiction of courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood stirred something in young audiences. Recruiters even reported new enlistees referencing the movie as inspiration. Ironically, a film designed to show the horrors of war ended up encouraging people to sign up. Art doesn't always have predictable consequences. Sometimes it plants seeds the director never intended. Spielberg refused a director's fee. Steven Spielberg believed so strongly in Saving Private Ryan that he refused his usual upfront directing salary. Instead, he opted for a percentage of the profits, a move that proved massively lucrative when the film grossed over $480 million worldwide. But it wasn't just about money. Spielberg didn't want to be accused of cashing in on soldiers' suffering. He told Paramount, "I'm not going to take a fee for this story." His gamble turned into one of the most profitable deals of his career, while also preserving his moral stance. The graveyard opening hides a subtle trick. The film begins with an elderly veteran visiting a Normandy cemetery. For years, audiences assumed it was the older version of Captain Miller. But Spielberg later confirmed it's actually James Ryan. The misdirection was intentional, designed to unsettle viewers, to keep them questioning identity until the final reveal. Spielberg planted the confusion as a thematic echo. In war, individuality blurs, lives merge, and memory distorts. What you think you know may not be true. The trick fooled millions, proving that even in its quietest moments, Saving Private Ryan was still playing with perception. Saving Private Ryan wasn't just a movie. It was a gut punch of history, crafted with sweat, pain, and unrelenting truth. Behind every explosion, every whispered line, and every tear shed on set was Spielberg's mission: to make audiences remember, to make them feel, and to make them earn. The sacrifices of those who came before. If you learned something new today, like and subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's hidden battlegrounds. And remember, earn this.